So in this project, what we're going to do first is we're going to use the Soundcraft as an external equalizer, external EQ for the guitar and the piano track in this recording that we made last year of the Beatles tune Let It Be. So there's a couple of things we have to do in order to do that. First, we have some things we have to set up in the Pro Tools session. Then we have to go over to the patch bay and actually wire it up. Then we'll get the sound happening. Then we'll go over to the Soundcraft and actually tweak the knobs on the EQ. So you'd want to do this if you're looking for kind of a vintage, low quality, lo-fi kind of sound. You want to be able to really drive some inputs and get some distortion, or just in this case want to get kind of a vintage sound. And sometimes it's just kind of fun to do something with hardware and try something different. So what we're going to do is we're going to first work on the Pro Tools session, set up our routing so that the audio will go to the audio interface called the Avid, from there into the Soundcraft, and then from the Soundcraft back into the Avid so we can hear it in the session. Avid has, our audio interface has 8 mono outputs and 8 mono inputs. We use outputs 1 and 2 for the bus that we listen to and we mix to. We see that when we go to the output of the master fader, and you see that it's selecting SPDIF left right stereo A1 and 2. So the first 2 outputs of the Avid are used for when we listen to the mix. So that leaves us with 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 and 8 that we can use to communicate to the outside separately from the master bus that we use to mix to. So that's what we're going to do. Is we're first going to go into the guitar track, click on the output of the guitar track, and assign it to something different than the master bus. We're going to assign it to output 3. So the numbers over here on the far right are the ones that you want to use. Don't pay attention to the 1, 2, 3, and 4 over here, because what happens is stereo is using 1 and 2. So then this is actually 3 and 4, like it shows over here. So we want to send the guitar to 3. So we'll ADAT1 under 3 and 4. And then we want to send the piano, again output, don't use bus, output to number 4, which is the second output of 3 and 4. So this now sends these 2 tracks someplace else than the regular stereo bus. And if I play this track, you don't hear the guitar and the piano. They're going out to the output in a different place. So then I need to set up a track to bring them back into the mix from the hardware, the external hardware. So I'm going to do Command-Shift-N. I'm going to make 2 mono audio tracks. You might be tempted to make an aux input, and I'll show you what happens if you do that. I'll make an aux input instead, just for a second here. I'll delete it in a minute. But if I create an aux input, I can set that input to the place where the hardware is coming back. But the thing is, I don't have a record button on an aux track. Aux tracks don't record. And ultimately what we want to do is when we get the EQ set in the Soundcraft, we actually want to record it into the project as another track. We want to do what they call write it or burn it, so that processing, that external hardware processing, is saved then into the project, and you won't have to recreate this routing every time you want to come in and remix the tune. You want to put your processing in as a recorded audio track eventually, so that you don't have to recreate it or to lose it. So I'm not going to use an aux track for a return. I'm going to delete that. And instead I want to make a regular audio track. So I need 2 mono audio tracks to bring back the guitar and the piano on 2 separate tracks. In this case now I want to set the input. This is going to become the guitar return, GTR Soundcraft, and the next one is going to be the piano Soundcraft. So the guitar went out to output 3. It's going to come back on any one of the free Avid inputs, and since we're not actually recording any mics or anything live, we could use any one of the 8. But I'm just going to, for simplicity's sake and keep my head on straight, I'm going to use the same 3 and 4 that I'm sending to. So I'm going to set the input of the guitar Soundcraft return as 3, and the input of the piano return, again input, interface, not bus, set it to 4. This is just like setting the inputs of your recording tracks to the panel inputs when we record from the studio with the mics. The thing is, we're going to circumvent that on the patch bay, and I'll show you that next. Alright, here we are at the patch bay. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the patch bay to make the connections between our Avid outputs and into Soundcraft, and then back into the Avid so we can hear it in the mix. So find the place where it says Avid outputs. That's the output that we're sending the guitar track and the piano to. Soundcraft mic pre-ins, Soundcraft direct outs, going over here to Avid in. So basically, we set it up to come out of Avid 3. So you'll see 1, 2, 3. Avid output 3 goes into Soundcraft mic pre-in 1, comes out of the direct out, and goes over here into Avid input 3 is the one I set the guitar to return on. And then I do the same thing for the piano. Piano comes out on 4, goes into the mic pre-input channel 2, the second channel strip, comes out of the Soundcraft direct out number 2, same number we went into, and then goes over here into Avid input 4. Avid out, Soundcraft mic pre-in, Soundcraft direct out, way down here, Avid in. Okay, so now I have the guitar patched out on the patch bay from Avid 3 into the first channel strip of the Soundcraft, coming direct out of the first channel strip of the Soundcraft, going in to Avid 3 on over on the patch bay. So I hit play, and still nothing's happening. Okay, this is the secret. You can't forget about this. You need to click the input. And now you'll start to see some signal coming back from the Soundcraft. If you don't do this, you'll drive yourself crazy because you'll never hear anything coming back. This is the one thing that makes using a aux track easier than a regular audio track, because an aux track is always listening to the input. But again, we want to be able to hit the record button and print these effects into the mix. So we definitely want to use a regular audio track, but that requires us to hit the input. So now that we have the input selected, we can start to see some action going out of the mix into the Soundcraft and back again. We'll go over to the Soundcraft and set our settings. So here we are at the Soundcraft. We've patched in the patch bay. We have our signals happening. They're going over to the Soundcraft via Avid 3 and 4. They're coming back into the mix through 3 and 4. We've assigned them to the mic pre-inputs 1 and 2. So they're coming in on these first 2 tracks here, the left 2 tracks. I'm going to get the session rolling. The one thing that might happen, depending on how people have used this, it could be really distorted. You could be getting a whole lot of level coming through on that, and we need to tame it down. You'll see these red lights just peaking all the time. That's okay to get started. Sometimes it helps. You know, you can get an enormous amount of distortion out of this if you really want it. What we want to do is we have these lights not light up anymore. There's a couple of ways to do that. Up here at the top, we'll start by pushing the pad in. they could still be distorting. We could still have the red lights on. You need to use these red trim buttons, trim pots, to turn the volumes down. And as you turn the volumes down, the distortion will go away. You'll see the peak lights going off. We want to have, unless you're looking for distortion, you really don't want these lights coming on, because the minute they start coming on, they're going to distort. So you want to have it as high as it reasonably can be without ever making the red light come on. Then you can start applying some EQ. EQ are the top 4 buttons here, the black ones. All the rest of this is disabled, so you don't have any aux sends, you don't have any panning. These faders aren't being used, because what's happening is the direct out is actually these cables right up here. The signal's coming into the channel strip, going through the trims, going through the EQ, and going directly back out. It's never going into its own master bus. It's not actually going into these faders at all. So between the trim, the pad, then you can add some EQ. These are fixed band. You can't change, they don't sweep the frequency like they do in the software plugins. They're fixed frequencies. So you can basically do some, sort of generalized sound sculpting here. So put your EQ on the way you want it, then you can go back into Pro Tools and mix. Okay, so this is the last step. We now have our output set, input set through the patch panel. We have our inputs levels tamed over at the Soundcraft board. We've added some EQ the way we like it. Now we're listening to it in the mix. We can turn these peak lights off. Maybe bring the levels down a little bit. The last step is we could record these 2 tracks so that we can put the effects, in this case the equalization from the Soundcraft, onto a track. So we just scroll back to the beginning of the tune, turn loop playback off, and in real time record it down, just like you're recording down a live performance, and it'll add actually, I'll just jump to where the guitar and the piano come in, just for demo purposes. And you can see it burning the guitar and the piano with the EQ. So then when we go ahead and mix it down later, we'll use this track for the guitar and the piano, or we could blend it if we wanted to. Okay, that's it. I'm going to show you some more things to do with the Soundcraft in the next videos.